Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 17th meeting of the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. Ms. Pink, if you could please call the roll.
Chair Marion Pintor,
Present.
Vice Chair Nadia King Ayub. Secretary Bonnie Tank here. Dr. Arlie Brown,
Present.
Adele Fasano,
Present.
Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Present.
Andrew Hayes,
Here.
Tim Ware,
Here.
G.I. Wilson.
Here.
Let the record show that we have a quorum.
In clerk staff, I don't believe we have any board members who are joining us online tonight, so we don't need a statement of cause.
We don't have anybody who's joining online.
Okay, thank you.
And,
Go ahead.
if you may, for all the audience, please, if you can just, silence or, turn off your devices. So we don't disturb the meeting and the audience. Okay, thank you.
So if you are wishing to speak during public comment, if you could please fill out a speaker slip. I believe everyone who wants to speak during public comment has done that already. But I'm also going to ask that if you're here to speak on item number 8, that is the changes to CLERB rules and regulations, you plan to comment on that, could you please fill out those speaker slips in advance? So I know how many people we have planning to speak on that item. I appreciate it. Thank you. And now we will go to public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on any subject matter that is within CLERB's jurisdiction, but not an item on today's open session. So again, if you're here to speak on item number 8, the changes to CLERB's rules and regulations, please fill out a speaker slip to speak about that item when we get to that item. And with that, Norris, can you tell me the first speaker, please? We have 2 minutes for each speaker. Go ahead.
All right, as of now, Chair Pintar, we have total of 14 requests to speak in person and 3 online.
Okay, thanks. 2 minutes then. Thank you.
So first, we will start with Richard. Richard Thompson.
Yes.
You could make your way to the podium and microphone, sir. Thank you.
Good morning and good evening and thank you. It's been a long day for me. I'm just here to speak about the case that you guys did a review for me. I believe that docket number is 3445. And the committee's ruling on it. I just had a couple of questions because throughout your findings, you kept referring to Deputy 1 as the person that did not do anything to me or did not perform the actions that I claimed. So my question is, in a chronological order of me interacting with the sheriff's deputies, there was more than one deputy. So your findings to me are a little confusing and baffling because it should have been like Deputy 2, 3, or 4. Deputy 1 that I interacted with, as far as my chronological order of speaking with the deputies on that day, did nothing to me. Deputy 2 that walked up to my car and asked me to follow him, did nothing to me. It was the 3rd deputy that I interacted with, and the BWC footage clearly shows the interactions between us and with him strangling me with my hands cuffed behind my back. So it baffles me that this board has had foundings where they're saying the deputy did none of the things that I was bringing to light as improper behavior for a law enforcement officer. Especially when he's dealing with someone that was not the subject of the search to begin with. So I'm not sure where the board got their information or what footage was actually made available for you to do your ruling. But I would beseech you to please review that footage again because I believe your findings are grossly out of order. It has nothing in there indicates anything that I stated. And if you're going by the Deputy 1, as you call it, yeah, he didn't do anything to me. He was very professional. So I would agree with that.
Sir
And as
Thomas?
far as my claim is concerned, there's other deputies that need to be taken into consideration.
I'm gonna have, our executive officer, Mr. Kalina, address this quickly, but I do want to make it clear that this CLERB board here has not seen the body worn camera footage yet. The report that you have seen is, put together by our investigators. We will be reviewing that footage, so we appreciate you bringing that to our attention here.
And just to add one clarification to that, the deputy number is just the one of the individual that we were focused on. It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that's the
Okay.
first one you came into contact with. So just for your reference, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the first one you came in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Next, we will call Cameron Settles.
Hi, I'm Cameron Settles. I'm here with my family with regards to Matthew Settles, who was my uncle who died at in a county jail under sheriff's supervision. I just wanted to, my family will talk more about it later as well, but I just wanted to talk a little about who Matthew was to me. He was my uncle. My siblings and I loved him very much. And he should not have been placed in solitary confinement in jail, in my opinion. One of the things we're advocating for and that we want to see from Kelly Martinez is to stop putting severely mentally ill people in solitary confinement. There was a 2018 review that recommended that. And it seems to me that it's not a top priority for the sheriff's department. We're not asking for anything radical. We want to see mental illness not be criminalized in our criminal justice system. I want my uncle to be alive, and I want there not to be more cases like him. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next, we will call David Settles.
Okay, hello, I'm David Settles, brother of Matthew Settles. I reviewed the recent CLERB letter on Matthew's death while in custody. What immediately and emotionally hit me hard was the letter opening, which brought me back to when Matt was booked into custody on 6/3/2022. This day, June 3rd, was the last day I saw Matt, the last day I bear hugged Matt. June 3rd was Matt's birthday. We had visited Matt in San Diego County Psychiatric Hospital, where I had visited Matt many times. Matt was in a crisis. Matt thought people were imposters. The CLERB letter continues that 2 days later, Matt was evaluated by jail medical personnel and put in the general population where he sustained significant injuries. This is utterly devastating. It is extremely frustrating. CLERB did not have jurisdiction to assess medical personnel decisions. California Title 1915 regulations for incarceration states that death shall be reviewed to determine the appropriateness of clinical care, whether changes to policies, procedures, or practices are warranted to identify issues that require further study. I'd like to ask the sheriff, what are their findings for Matt's case? I suspect it's the same old story. They are not learning from their repeated preventable failures to protect and care for the mentally ill and doing a blame game with their medical staff. These regulations also state they shall identify and evaluate all mentally disordered inmates, to provide for the safety of inmates. The sheriff office utterly failed to keep Matt safe. These regulations also state they shall, in conjunction with the health authority and mental health director, identify, monitor, and provide treatment to those inmates who present a suicide risk. The sheriff utterly failed to keep Matt alive. It is disappointing that the CLERB has limited authority and teeth to shed more light on Matt's case. I plan to continue to come to CLERB in memory of Matt and solidarity with impacted families until fixes are made by the sheriff's office and the medical staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we will call Joan Settles.
Hi there, yeah, John Settles, Matthew Settles' brother. My brother, I agree wholeheartedly with his assessment that Matthew was failed by the system. And here we are 2 years, 4 months later, 2 weeks before Christmas, we get a report that says, hey, the sheriffs really didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, our family, we have a problem with that assessment, even though we realize you guys are doing good work and we're trying to expand the jurisdiction of CLERB so that medical people will, we would actually appreciate if maybe you could reconsider this case because medical personnel should have been considered because they seriously failed Matthew. He ended up in general population, being beat over the head, getting 56 stitches, and ended up in administrative segregation where he never should have been placed. All that was, indicated by the state auditors that stepped in as things that, probably should have been examined. We're hoping that we can push forward, but it really ruffles our feathers that the sheriff is hiding behind a checkbox system where they seem to think they're patting themselves on the back. Oh, we did everything great. But it's obvious that a mentally ill patient should not be yanked from stabilizing care, put into general population, beat over the head, and then put in administrative segregation. The fact that the sheriff thinks that's okay, and then this board issues a report that says that the sheriff, patted themselves on the back and that's all that we can do, that's unacceptable. As citizens of San Diego, we're hoping you can push forward and get more oversight and get more accountability from the sheriffs, because this is reprehensible. I mean, can you imagine what if your family member was in there? They yanked him out, they yanked him out of the care that he needed and basically issued him a death sentence. Unacceptable. Hopefully we can move towards change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Brenda Settles.
My name is Brenda Settles, and I'm the mother of Matthew Settles, who died in custody August 16, 2022 at George Bailey. I just want to say I'm so appreciative of my family here to support me, because this time of year at Christmas is so difficult to think that I won't have Matthew there with us when he was always such a big part of our family. Our niece, there he is with his little niece. And there's his nephew and all of our family. He was there. He would love to tell jokes. He'd always buy a present for everybody. He'd play games with us. And mostly he loved the outdoors. Okay, he had a mental illness. I mean, he was on the right track. He was going to UCLA. He graduated, and then he had a horrible break. And he had ups and downs. And he had recently had a really long period of sustainability, but when he had that, I feel like I gave him a death sentence, because I called and said, please pick up my son and take him for care. And when he ended up in the jails, I wasn't aware that in 2018, where they said that there were more suicides in San Diego jails and in all the jails in California, all the prisons in California, and even the other jails in the nation. And they made very strong recommendations of how to treat the mentally ill. If 40% of the population is mentally ill, you need to do a better job in the jails. They need to have better care. And they know that. One of the things they said, don't put them in isolation. And it breaks my heart to think that the last few weeks of his life, I not only could not talk to a person about his case, I couldn't talk to him. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Davy Settles.
So reading through the CLERB report concerning the in-custody death of my brother-in-law Matthew Settles, I sadly have more questions than answers. What happened to Matthew? Why was he removed from a safe environment, the county mental health facility, where he was being treated for a serious mental illness and placed in jail? Why was he put in with the general population of the jail rather than in the psych unit? Who made that decision? Matthew met not one, but all the criteria established by the sheriff's office for the PSUs. He was deemed a danger to himself or others, he was gravely disabled, and he was under permanent conservatorship. Why didn't the sheriff's office consult Matthew's county-appointed conservator about his mental and medical health treatment? Why was Matthew allowed to refuse antipsychotic medication necessary to stabilize his behavior? Why was he punished when his psychotic behavior predictably got out of hand? Why was he kept in solitary confinement for an extended period of time, a recognized form of torture for the severely mentally ill, according to United Nations standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners, especially after he engaged in self-harm? Why was he transferred to George Bailey, where there is no psychiatric unit at all? Again, why wasn't his county-appointed conservator consulted or even notified before, during, or after his transfer? Why was Matthew denied contact with his conservator and his family? Why was Matthew allowed to commit suicide in solitary confinement in George Bailey Detention Center only a little over 2 months after being detained on a charge our family still doesn't entirely understand? Why, after waiting 2 years, was Matthew's CLERB investigation report issued the same day the Board of Supervisors vote, a week ago today, that enabled your oversight committee to review medically related deaths in custody? The timing of that report was most unfortunate. In light of the Board of Supervisors vote, will you reconsider reviewing the items in your investigation you deemed medically related and not within your jurisdiction, now that you have authority to review medical personnel and procedures? CLERB, our family was counting on you. I feel like the system has failed us once again. The lack of transparency, self-examination, and accountability in the sheriff's office has made it incumbent upon families to sue just to get answers. That's a crying shame and would be completely unnecessary if they would just let CLERB do its job and adopt the recommendations already made by this body and other auditors. Sorry, I can't.
Thank you. Next, we will call Paloma Serna.
My name is Paloma Serna. I'm the mother of Elisa Serna, who died on November 11, 2019. These are the individuals who are responsible for killing her: William Gore, Kelly Martinez, since she was the undersheriff, deputies were Sean Foster, Lucas Lacey Lovisa, Tony Hall Bennett, nurses, Daniel Lee Pasquale, Hazel Kamama, Lorna Roque, Dr. Frederick Von Lente, and Carol Ann Gilmore. I will say their name, and also that goes out for nurse called Paulette, who stated that we shouldn't be calling their names. It is disgusting to know that Kelly Martinez pats herself on the back. She continues to feed the community with lies about all the changes she makes to keep overdoses and in custody deaths low. It is not because of her hard work. It is the community who impacted families who applied pressure and working with, at the time, Assemblymember Weber, AB 268, and Senator Tony Akin, SB 19, to pass these two bills. It took the BSCC to change the rules and regulation regarding safety cell checks and make a supervisor view logs to make sure that the deputies are doing it. But with CLERB's finding in the Matthew Settle and Abdil Sabara Hernandez shows differ. Saraba Bia wasn't seen alive for hours. The deputies, most of assuming that he was refusing or not wanting his medication. Maybe the deputies thought he was being disruptive, like Elisa Serna. Matthew Settle should have never been in county jail and should have never been placed in isolation cell. He suffered with mental illness. This shows how the San Diego Sheriff is dishonest and will do anything to cover their rear. They falsify jail laws to make it seem like they are doing their job. They cover up and shift blames on the victims. The Sheriff Department needs to be held accountable. Deputies need to be charged, tried, and convicted with their co-workers, the medical staff. The Sheriff Department had someone come out to look at and do a report how they could handle suicide better. But once again, the Sheriff Department decided not to listen and continue to do their own thing. They're lazy, uncompassionate, neglectful, and killing individuals in the jail. Oh, let me handle what, the Grace, John, the family attorney, this is all they have to work the case, to get justice. Is this your finding?
Thank you. Next, we will call Thomas Lewis.
I have a deputy standing next to her husband.
Hi, my name is Tom Lewis. This is my wife, Letty Lewis.
Can you just hold on for just a second? I'm sorry, sir. We'll start the time over again. Go ahead and start.
Okay, well, you know our names now. So we've been here before, a few times. We've filed complaints with investigators. And, over the past 9.5 years, we've emailed threats against us and our property to investigators who have remained silent, knowing silence was violence against us. Tonight, I don't know if they gave it to you, we brought a one page here. It's your purpose and mission that you're supposed to be doing. And then we brought 9 pages of the fraud, deceit, and trickery from the Ramona Town Pigs. That they wouldn't have been able to get away with that if you just would have done this right here. So what is worse than being hated? The only thing worse than being hated is being ignored. We did your job. Our complaint is because you're corrupt. We couldn't stop predators within your ranks 100%, resulting in the permanent loss of use of our property for its intended purpose or to live in peace and safety 100% of the time. A willful, deliberate disregard to protect human life and property. An epic failure, a breach, causing unsurmountable pain and suffering and damages. Opening the door to hold you responsible, personally responsible in a civil court. And it should not be forgotten, hate crimes have no statute of limitations. You willingly and knowingly protected the most vicious, vile filth this planet has to offer. Parasite predators who prey on women and children as young as 6 weeks old and gave glee, happiness, relish, and entertainment from doing so. Your complete lack of contrition, remorse borders on pathological. We don't expect to get justice here tonight. That's why we've written this book, and it'll be marketed next year. This is the synopsis of it. But we want to honor you at the first picture in the book. And quote, "This is America. Your wife is a minority. She should expect discrimination and everything that comes with it," unquote. This is what a group of Ramona Town Pigs told us. We can't exist with that type of racism and bigotry in our community. So we'll go public with this now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Yusuf Miller.
Good evening, my name is Yusuf Miller, and I'm with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and Saving Lives in Custody, California. Here to support the Settles family. And I think you guys remember, as Brenda Settles alluded to, before we had the fentanyl crisis, there was a suicide crisis in California. There were people committing suicide at such a high rate that it was a statewide issue. When the fentanyl issue came out, this crisis was swept under the rug. It was still happening, but swept under the rug. People were miscategorized with their mental health. People are not getting the proper programs in their mental health. People are not getting the proper medication in their mental health. And we are losing family members from their mental health neglect in our county. We lost Matthew Settles and Gilbert Gill and so many others, and Kevin Mills, people who are suffering from mental health crisis and they were not taken care of in our sheriff's department. This is not something that we can fix overnight, but it is something that we need to be expeditious for. We all need to get involved in this to make sure that there's not another Matthew Settles who meets all the criteria of having the proper care and diversion from law enforcement, a diversion from in custody, and yet they are incarcerated, they're criminalized unto death. We need to prefer diversion. We should prefer programs and healthcare. But instead, the greatest and largest healthcare facility for mental health is our county jails. This is a shameful statistic. This is a shameful statistic, not something to beat our chest on and not something to celebrate. We need to divorce mental health and law enforcement at every point possible. And if we can do that, maybe we would save more lives instead of bringing them all into a criminalization of mental health. we would still have our loved ones with us. These families will never get over. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusuf. I believe we still have a couple more. No, oh, okay, we're all set, sorry.
Thank you. Next, we will call Sabrina Widow.
I lost switched her out. She was husband and husband, families were talking. Hello, Sabrina Weddle, Saxon Rodriguez's older sister. I want to first start by mentioning the deputies' names who were responsible for Saxon's death, July 20th, 2021. Brian Powell, Andrew Randovich, Maxwell Rimple, Andre Wanzer. You puffing and puffing too. Y'all tired? Huh? Gotta get that checked out. Melissa Burns, Reggie Barreto, Carrie Cavello, Reincarnacion, Caitlin Hendricks, Marlena Banza, Kelly Payne, Letty Santos, and Chantel Williams, the 9 nurses that were also responsible for Saxon's death on July 20th, 2021. Not to mention Claudette, who went to the meeting last week and said she feels terrified. Do you guys feel terrified of us, and that's why you guys need these extra deputies? I'm just wondering, what did we do to you to need an extra deputy huffing and puffing in my ear? Like, I don't like the San Diego sheriffs because they don't know how to do their jobs. Starting with what they're paid to do, the time cell checks. It's why Matthew Settle's family's here. It's why Saxon Rodriguez is here. Not to mention, Elisa Serna, they watch her on camera die. They enjoy it. They're usually in the hallway kicking shit. I don't know why they're not out there currently. This is ridiculous. And maybe it's because people like Andrew Hayes is endorsed by the San Diego Sheriffs for Lakeside. I mean, last week, you gave kudos to the San Diego Sheriffs. They're not doing their job. It's crazy that you guys sit here and say you're not for the people, you're not for them, but then you go and give them credit.
You're supposed to be a citizen.
Kiss their.
Can
Thank
can we
you.
please have order in the room while someone's speaking? Thank you.
I support everything they're saying.
Thank you. Next, we will call Sandy Widow.
Cindy Weddle, I'm here representing North County Equity Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody, California. I am the mother of Saxon Rodriguez, who died in Central Jail 3 years ago. And 3 years later, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around the sheriffs Gore and Martinez not having to be held accountable morally or ethically, not being held liable legally or financially. Their power and authority continue to go unchecked despite hundreds of deaths in custody. Despite millions of tax dollars paid out in wrongful death lawsuits, despite oversight from the CLERB and the BSCC. The sheriff is good for nothing but mass incarceration, and they're not even good at that, with the highest body count in San Diego. I'm here this evening to support the family of Matthew Settles. And as I read through the case summary, I am appalled and shocked to learn that there was some sworn staff that had the power and authority to move Matthew from a facility that had psychiatric care to a facility with absolutely no mental health care. We want to know who did that. I think that's what needs to be investigated. Who made that decision, because that killed him?
Yes.
We want to know who, because they need to be shamed publicly, just like our loved ones that died. No more victim blaming. Because all that unchecked power is killing people, innocent people, unsentenced people, mentally ill people, medically fragile people. The Settles family deserves to know who that person was, who those people were that moved their son and put him in isolation when he needed medical care. And lastly, I want to say to my son, rest in peace, Saxon Rodriguez.
Thank you. Next, we will call Elka.
Hi, my name is Ilka Weston, and I'm part of North County Equity and Justice Coalition. I will be speaking about a family later on topic 3. One, I am glad that now we have a little bit more power here, and I want to believe that we're going to use it appropriately because we really have to. All of these families, what they've gone through, what's missing? A mental health hospital, addiction support. That shouldn't be happening in our jails and institutions. That is absolutely just abhorrent. You don't have to be educated or knowledgeable or any way to know that these are human lives. And when you put them in general pop, what is going to happen with somebody that is still trying to get off drugs that they can't get off without medication? And we need real doctors and real nurses, and they need to have open doors. We understand that there could be crimes that are egregious, but what these families are sharing with you is I watch the videos at night. I can't even sleep because I'm so sad about this. So let's fight and let's call the woman out who pushed and shoved Gore and Kelly Martinez down our throat and then took credit by helping get the bill passed. The only way she's going to step down is if Kelly Martinez is asked to step down by Senator Tony Atkins. And that's a fact. And we all know it's true. And she'll make a great governor with that kind of admission of where she stands. She needs to also stand against the person she got elected. Again, I am glad there is more power with you people. I do, with all of you on the board. But now we have to really get down to business and make things happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we will call Marcus.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Marcus Gross. I'm the civil rights attorney in town. It's been a few months since I attended these meetings in person, but I'm here today to support my client, Richard Thompson, who is complaint number 24045. Before I get to that, I want to express my support for the Settles family who turned out and the continuing meeting regulars, we'll call them, who have lost loved ones in custody and continue to turn out. In Mr. Thompson's matter, I think it's important the board see the body worn camera footage yourself. Richard Thompson, my client, is a social worker with Father Joe's. He spent years working with homeless outreach teams alongside police. He's not an anti-cop activist by any measure, but now he's the victim of law enforcement violence by the sheriffs. Because on the morning of this incident, they showed up to execute a warrant at his apartment for someone who hadn't lived there in years. And Mr. Thompson found them in the parking lot in full SWAT gear, armor, AR-15s, and the armored vehicle, and asked them what was happening, only to find out they were there for someone who hadn't lived there. And he was upset that his family inside was in danger. And Sergeant Sean Thompson, the supervisor on scene, reacted angrily. And I've seen the body worn camera footage, I hope you do too. What he did was he cuffed Mr. Thompson behind his back. He escorted him to a police vehicle where Mr. Thompson was upset, but completely compliant. And then when Sergeant Thompson lost his temper, he put his hand on Richard Thompson's throat and choked him. Now, the other deputies there intervened, thankfully, and Sergeant Thompson's now given a self-serving explanation, but I'd urge you to look at the other deputies' faces in the body-worn camera because it tells the whole story. They look at him wide-eyed, shocked at what he just did, and they say, Sergeant, we got it. You'll see the excessive force, and I hope you don't adopt the tentative findings that are submitted to you today.
Thank you. Next we will call Brody.
Good evening. I'm an attorney. I'm here on behalf of representing the Matthew Settles family as well as another matter that CLERB is going to address tonight, Abdel Saravia. I wanted to talk about a reoccurring theme that I've seen in these cases. Sheriff's Department's inability to conduct adequate safety checks. It's happening over and over and over. And in both of these cases before you tonight, your board has recommended sustained findings that the deputies involved did not conduct adequate safety checks. Those are essential parts of ensuring inmate safety. Regardless of what happens before, that's deputies' last chance to intervene and potentially save an inmate's life. And if the deputies in both of these two cases had done that on these 2 days, these families might not be here tonight. They'd still have their loved ones with them. I appreciate the board's recommended policy change in Matthew Settles' matter, but I don't think that goes far enough. Simply asking the sheriff's department to change their policy to comply with state law isn't good enough. We deserve more as San Diego citizens. Our inmates deserve more. So I'd ask CLERB to go even further with their recommendation and say, if the sheriff's department is going to continue against best practices to house mentally ill inmates in administrative segregation, that those safety checks need to be conducted at least every 30 minutes, minimum. If we're gonna make meaningful change, we're gonna need CLERB's help, and we need to dream bigger. Asking them to just comply with state law Title 15 is not enough. San Diego deserves better, our inmates deserve better. Thank you.
I think that concludes the request to speak in person, and we can switch to online requesters. We have 5 in total. I will start with Leslie Crawford.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you this time.
Okay, thank you. My son Raymond Vogelman was beaten to death 22 days before a scheduled hearing for requesting his release to a mental health facility. The thing that Matthew Settles and Raymond had in common, besides schizophrenia, was that they both were placed in a situation where they were at risk, and neither one was properly monitored within the required 60 minutes, either in person or by video. George Bailey personnel was aware of their inability, their vulnerability, and that they had been attacked before and beaten in the past at that same facility. The sheriff department does not share that information with loved ones, at least not in Raymond's case. My hope is that recent state legislation will at least get these simple changes of protective placement for mental health patients and proper timely monitoring. That should be a simple thing. The current sheriff obviously considers it insulting if anyone says that she's not doing her job. But I say to you that video monitoring and training of personnel is her job. And I'm not impressed when she talks about upgrading facility management when I haven't heard anything about upgrading video monitoring or training of personnel. I'm bleeding like anybody who cares will bleed with the Settles family tonight. There's a lot of pain there. There's no reason he is not still walking on this earth. And it's not enough. I thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to the changes being implemented now that you have a little more clout, supposedly. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we will call Karen Remus.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Thank you. Good evening, CLERB members. My name is Karen Remus. My pronouns are she, her, and I was born and reside in San Diego County. On November 17th, the Union Tribune published an article entitled, quote, "More often than not, San Diego Sheriff, Probation Chief reject or delay oversight board recommendations," end quote. The story stated that in just under 5 years, CLERB had issued almost 100 policy recommendations to improve conditions and processes within the sheriff's and probation departments, but that almost 2/3 of those policy suggestions were rejected or delayed by the sheriff and/or chief probation officer. So CLERB, while I was glad to read about the Board of Supervisors' recent vote to expand your authority, that news is set against this overarching background of San Diego Sheriff and Probation Chief rejection and delay of your crucially important oversight policy recommendations. Myself and so many others are incredibly grateful for your volunteerism and commitment. Your diligence in drafting recommendations to save lives and improve conditions and practices should not sit stagnating. To that end, I would like to thank you for providing a written update on outstanding policy recommendations last month. Tonight, I ask that you please continue to provide that same written update every month. This would have the benefit of incentivizing the sheriff and/or probation departments to be more responsive. It would also give the public the opportunity to readily access a vital piece of your important work. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening.
Thank you. Next, we will call Darwin Fishman.
Good evening. Good evening. Darwin Fishman, he, him, his, Racial Justice Coalition, San Diego. Thank you. I want to start by, I have some comments about the process. But I did want to start by saying that for CLERB, I hope that you continue to support your members, especially members that are in support of the reforms that were just passed by the supervisors. And so that the community is watching when members come up like Nadia, we're seeing who's getting renewed and who's not being allowed to be back or to stay on the board for CLERB. With that, also want to say we appreciate the role that you played with going to the supervisors to get the reforms passed. When San Diegans for Justice did the audit, they had the recommendations, and it was obviously very clear from the beginning that some of them couldn't just be passed by CLERB, but you need to go to the supervisors. I'm glad that was finally done and that you partnered with the right people. What I want to say, share, is what I'm concerned about is the process for it. What I was actually most shocked by, and I hope this doesn't slip through the cracks, is the response from Sheriff Martinez and basically attacking not just Supervisor Montgomery Stepp and saying that her and the people that supported these reforms are ones that want to abolish jails, but it also smears CLERB and all of us that come to your meetings and all the organizations and impacted families that are working on this. And the Settles family is exactly right. Their opening comments about it's not radical to ask for better care for people that have mental health challenges that are coming into the jails. That is not abolishing a jail. And Sheriff Martinez needs to be challenged, not by just by us, but also by CLERB. As pointed out, when she comes to meetings, take that on, set up a process in which he's an honest broker and is not going to, if we have a disagreement, is not going to make disparaging comments about impacted families in our organizations. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Nars, can I just make a clarification? I know that I did ask people to submit their speaker slips for item number 8. I just want to make sure that you're keeping those separate from public comment. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Alan.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, awesome. I would like to make a comment on the investigator's report, as there is a gross misstatement in the report. let me look that back up for you here, and I'll tell you what it was. Here we go. It has to do with complaint, case number 24-042/Honeycutt. Item number 3, where it says, that I had testified that the judge had not given permission to observe other courtrooms while on break. That is not what I said. I would recommend that the recording be reviewed. What I said was, the judge gave very clear instructions what we could and could not do, including not discussing the case among ourselves, with our family or anybody else. There was never a mention of whether or not you could go to another court not to observe. So I wanted to clarify that one in particular, since that's a misrepresentation of a recorded conversation I had with the investigator. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any more online comments?
Yes, we have Michael Serna.
Yes, I would like to address the clerk this evening in the forum.
Can,
My,
can,
my,
can do it always.
Hang on a
Just
second.
staring at us.
He is staring at me.
I'm sitting right here and I see him looking out at the crowd. So
Well,
if you're
but-
uncomfortable with him looking at you, then maybe you should
No,
leave the room.
no, he should not be looking at the crowd, because what he's doing is he's
Intimidation.
intimidation to the whole people here.
There's a reason why he's here tonight and he is supposed to be observing this meeting. So if you're uncomfortable with him
No, he can.
looking in your direction, then I suggest that you can leave the room. You can sit outside.
He can do it from the back.
There is a reason why he's
Well, what
placed.
is the reason? Tell us, so we know what it is.
Ma'am, if you're uncomfortable with it, would you like to move seats? There's other seats in the back. You're
No.
welcome to sit outside.
The thing is.
Ma'am, we need to
way
carry
he's
on with
doing
this
it.
meeting. Can you please have a seat and let us proceed? Please let us proceed. Thank you.
Crazy. It's the system is crazy.
I'm sorry, Mr. Serna, I'm sorry that you were interrupted. I know that you would like to speak. Can you please start his time again? Thank you.
yes. Yes, hello?
Yes, go ahead.
We can hear you, sir.
Yes, my daughter Elisa Serna died in November 2019. You know, just before her, a person died named Bruce Stuckey in March 2017. And just like the poor Settles families, you guys found that everybody was cleared in 2017. This man died because he was not given the proper treatment by nursing staff and by the sheriff's department while he was incarcerated there. My daughter died exactly of the same thing. She was not administered the right protocols and she died in 2019, 2 years later. Here we are, and CLERB is issuing this statement again that everything is okay. They don't see any error. How many more lives have to perish before you guys will finally stand with us? It's like they stated this evening. We don't want all kinds of crazy things. We don't want for anything but just that that the sheriff's department would do the right thing, that people would do their jobs, that, you know, they would give us more than a toothless tiger to represent us and stand up for us. How are they protecting the community when they will not give the CLERB any teeth? When they cannot even stand against the sheriff, whatever recommendations they bring before the sheriff's department, they got the right to just turn it down. Thank you.
Secretary, we have one last one in person, if you allow me to call.
Okay.
Julia, you?
Thank you and good evening. My name is Julia Yu and I'm a civil rights lawyer. And one of my clients is Tammy Wilson, who is the wife of Omar Moreno Oroyo, who died in the central jail on January 6th of 2021. From the time that he was placed in a dressed out cell at 5 p.m. until his dead body was discovered at 10:30 p.m., the county was, per their own policies and procedures, required to conduct 7 safety checks, 2 soft counts, and 1 hard count. Of those 10 checks, as to 2, nobody showed up. As to 1, the deputy was late. And as to the safety or the soft counts, as it turns out on the 2nd floor of that jail, they don't conduct them at all, which violates their written policies. So when somebody tells you that there's a 50-50 chance that the county will fail to conduct proper cell checks, they are literally and statistically correct. But if you take into account the checks that were conducted, in which you see on the video, the deputies walking past without breaking stride and glancing into the cell checks, I would say that the failure rate is 100%. Today, you're reviewing 2 deaths, in which case that you have found that there were a total of 5 deputies that failed to conduct proper cell checks. I implore you to not only look at the immediate cell checks before somebody was found dead, but again, look at the entire policies and procedures and what had happened during that entire 12-hour shift. Because deputies will conduct themselves according to their training and the policies and the practices that are accepted by their own supervisors. And it goes all the way to the top. So who ultimately is being held accountable here? I ask that you dig deeper to see, is this according to the practices that were accepted and promoted within the jails? Thank you so much.
That concludes our request to take item number 8. Okay, so that concludes public comment. Item number 3, we will move to item number 4, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? GI, is there a second?
Sure.
And Dr. Brown seconds that, Bonnie. Can you call the roll?
Chair Miriam Pintor,
Yes.
Secretary Bonnie Pink, yes. Dr. Arlie Brown,
Yes.
Adele Fasano,
Yes.
Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Yes.
Andrew Hayes,
Yes.
Tim Ware,
Yes.
G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Let the record show that the motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Bonnie. Number 5, we don't have a presentation training today. We will move into item number 6, the executive officer's report. Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Can we have the volume down in the audience, please, so we can carry on? Go ahead, Brett.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, my name is Brett Polino. My pronouns are he, him, his. I will start by talking about just staff situation for CLERB. We are currently in the process of our recruitment phase for additional special investigators. We've seen a significant amount of applications come in, and we believe that we'll be ready to start first interviews sometime early January and hopefully get to second interviews not long after that. So it's looking good for us to be able to get that in the new year. And just a reminder, we are off on January. We are having recess, and so our next meeting will be February of 2025. I want to remind the community that the community survey on our website is still open, and that is accessible until December 21st. We want you to go there and give an opportunity to express some of the things you're talking about tonight, and not have a limitation of 2 minutes, but just to be able to express yourself and talk about things you want to see from CLERB in the future. So please take that opportunity while you can. Just as an update for the board, the board has not, or CLERB staff has not received a response to our letter of concern regarding the in-custody death study. So just letting you all know that we have not received anything. It's my understanding that you have not received anything, Chair. So we will be talking with council and then getting back to everybody on what the next steps might be as we approach in 2025.
A reminder that in February, Chief Tamika Nelson of probation will be here to give a presentation. And so we are looking forward to her first ever presentation to CLERB. So we're excited about that opportunity. And then I want to let you know, also know that CLERB Council filed our first petition with court to open adult probation case. We do not have any decision on that yet, but we hope that that is the beginning of the process for us to start opening these up. We are also reviewing how we will go forward with opening up juvenile probation cases. The big issue with that is we still need additional information from the juvenile council, juvenile probation council, in order to just open the cases to the so we're waiting on that. I want to say thanks and appreciation to attend the meeting on Saturday, put on by Saving Lives in Custody in California, and their invitation of the BSCC new in custody death director. It was nice to hear her comments, and I really appreciated the opportunity to listen to the families, again, without a 2-minute limitation, and hear the concerns of the individuals there. I'm there, I want to listen, I want to hear about them. Just for your information, Ms. Ganter and I are in contact. We will be working together as much as we possibly can. And so I look forward to building that relationship with them and seeing how we can work together. And then it's just a reminder to the community. I appreciated that invitation to that event. I came there to listen. If there are community events that you all believe we should be at or participate in, please ask. That's what we're here for. We may not be able to discuss cases, right? That is part of our process that we're doing here, but we can talk to you about our vision, our goals, how we see ourselves moving forward, what we can and cannot do to your community members that maybe don't know enough about CLERB yet. So I welcome that opportunity to get out to the community and talk to them as much as possible. So please feel free to do that. The workload is posted out there. For the first time in quite some time, we have less open cases than closed cases. So we dropped down a little bit in our case total. The case investigators have been working really hard to get them done so we can have this recess for January. So I really appreciate the amount of work and extra work that they've put in. We're now at 146 open investigations. And we have 18 of those that we will review today. I would just add that as we are now in December, we have considerably gone past the largest amount of investigations that CLERB has opened. And if you look at the totals from about 2020 on, we are about 50% higher than where they were at in 2020. So a significant jump in the number of investigations that the investigators have had to do just in this year. We're closing in on 200 for this year alone. So
we're going to get our new investigators soon.
Hopefully. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Brett. Move to item number 7, the board chair's report. It's been a very busy month for me and for all of the CLERB board, including Mr. Klein, and I know our investigators worked really hard to get the additional cases done this month. This month, I joined staff from the Finance and Government group to interview several people who've applied for vacant CLERB seats. For those who are not familiar with the process, there are several interviews that take place before these nominations move along to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. So I had close to a dozen of those this month. Also had a lot of communication with County Supervisor District 4 staff regarding Supervisor Montgomery Stepp's CLERB reform proposal. It's called Improving Public Safety Through Effective Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. I was invited, as was Mr. Kalina, and we did participate in the supervisor's press conference on December 5 to announce her proposal. And again, her proposal was based on CLERB's February 2024 action to revise our rules and regulations to expand our oversight to include authority to review the actions of healthcare providers and county detention facilities. Mr. Klein and I were also invited to participate in the presentation when this proposal was before the Board of Supervisors on December 10th. I want to thank everybody who showed up to testify at that meeting. I know many of you here were there. Thank you for being there. I was very pleased that we received unanimous support from the 4 supervisors that were present that day, and I think your presence made a difference. So thank you for being there. As you'll hear when we get to our new business, which is our next item, what Supervisor Montgomery Step has proposed does not go as far as what we approved as CLERB board in February. And that's why we're taking the action that we're taking today, taking tonight. So our proposed rules and regulation changes reflect the proposal that she's put forward to the Board of Supervisors. So for the county to be able to move forward with drafting the actual ordinance, our rules and regulation changes that we approve as a board have to reflect that proposal. So that's what we're doing in our next item. Finally, I want to thank the CLERB staff, Aurora, Naris, Brett, for helping the board here to get set up with a new secured program that allows us to receive our closed session cases online in a confidential and safe manner. I know it's not easy to corral this whole board to get some of those technology changes done. So thank you for your patience with all of us. And I want to thank the investigators for their work as always. You may make a comment to my comments. Yeah.
Yes. No, I just wanted to remind everyone that we did present attachments to the agenda today, which were the recommendations from the state audit and the recommendations from the San Diegans for Justice. Those are on the website. We wanted the community to get a chance to read those before we had a chance to put that on the agenda in February. We expect you to have that opportunity. We wanted to give you the opportunity to review them first. And the same thing, I just wanted to remind everyone that there was policy responses from the Sheriff's Department. We will get those added, updated properly on our website. And so that this going forward 2025 and on, we will be updating them as we receive the policy responses from the Sheriff's Department. So everyone will see, as one of the callers mentioned, that where we are standing each month.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I missed that you did not finish with items E and F, but to be clear, because a caller did mention this earlier, those policy recommendations and the audit recommendations and the San Diegans for Justice recommendations are all in spreadsheets now on the CLERB website that you can see what has been adopted, what still requires action. Many of the recommendations that were made in a lot of those reports we were able to adopt internally by CLERB staff. Some of them require Board of Supervisors approval, similar to our action that we took in February. So it's all there. If you click on the agenda for tonight on the website, all those attachments are there. And I think our staff did a really good job of making it pretty easy to follow. So thank you for that clarification, Brett. With that, we'll move to item number 8, new business. This is proposed for, I'm sorry.
Are we allowed to ask questions in the reports, about the reports?
About the report. Oh, yes. Do you have a question about some of the recommendations and what's on the reports?
Well, Mr. Carolina's report.
Sure. Sorry about that.
So we're moving forward at a good pace, and I appreciate it. I'm concerned, I'd just like to know, you've been here for a while now. Do you think we have the right number of staff to do the work that we need to do currently? And then also, what do we have, what do we need to do in the future to make sure we have the right staff to support this work that we're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I will be working with the CAO over the next 60 days and maybe beyond to discuss what is needed for CLERB to be successful, not just where we stand today, but with this new jurisdiction. This is uncharted territory. As I talked about before, there is not an oversight board in the country that has the authorities over law enforcement the way we do, and to the same authority over the medical staff. There's not a model out there that we can look to for guidance on what we should be doing to make sure we're doing the right thing. So we're charting new paths by having this authority. I will say there's many many jurisdictions around the country that have gotten wind of this already and have already reached out to me on how we pulled this off. I believe that we are already underwater. I believe that it feels, I know it's only been 3+ months for me. I feel like I'm always trying to catch my breath. But I also feel that the staff is in the same position, even the ones that have been here for a considerable amount of time. I believe that the cases keep going up, but we aren't keeping pace with investigators. I believe we are trying to write policy and we're trying to analyze data, and we don't have policy analysts and we don't have just analysts to help us. We need those roles because the rest of us are fulfilling other roles. And we're still feel like we're putting out fires pretty consistently. And it's important because we don't want to make a mistake. We understand the gravity of our decisions and what we do every day. And so I want to make sure that that happens. So I believe that there's another pretty decent amount of staff that are going to be needed in order to make sure that we don't fail. Because I don't want us to go into this new jurisdiction and fail that, because if we fail there, it's going to have an effect on the current jurisdiction that we already have as well. So I want to make sure that we're doing it and doing it the right way. So I appreciate the question.
Yeah, in the future, you said a decent amount of staff is needed. Can you put some numbers to that staff for the positions?
Yeah, I think we need additional investigators. I think we need a policy analyst. We're going to be talking about standards of care for medical that none of us are experts on, nor have even had the years of experience that we have with the policies and procedures of peace officers. So we're going to need some help when we're trying to recommend changes to their standard of care. And we're going to need an analyst to review the data that comes in. We are going to need a comms person. We need someone that can aid us with outreach to the community, that can help us be that information sharer so that they can, get that information out. And so I think that we can maybe get a combo person, but someone that can help with press and outreach and communications would be extremely beneficial to us, because I believe that there's going to be a lot of eyes on our work over the next 2 years. And granted, it's going to take some time before those first cases come in and before we even get the records that go with those. So I believe the eyes are going to be on us very heavily for the next couple of years. And I think the country might be watching with the other oversights. So I want to make sure we're doing it right.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
In addition to the personnel review, and of course there are budgetary issues that come across with that. And with the expansion of the jurisdiction that takes place, will you also look at the ability to contract individuals, and maybe even have some backup, and being able to, use individuals who have investigative experience to help out if a surge comes along, and then with particular areas of expertise. So, I think there's gonna be a significant cost with this, and I wouldn't be shy about reviewing the budget.
So if I may interrupt just a second, I'm sorry, we're kind of getting into the next item territory, because he's planning to address all of that. And that is part of the supervisor's proposal, having to do with determining what additional resources we need to do this right. So if you are asking about that specifically, do you mind if we move to the next item to get to the answer to that question?
Yes, ma'am. Go right
Okay,
ahead.
thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that he knew that there was.
He's definitely thinking about it. Okay, all right, we're gonna move to new business then, the proposed rules and regulation changes, and I will turn it back over to Mr. Kleina.
Yeah, so I will just remind everyone a little bit about the procedure for this, because I know that the board, here we go again. I know that the board wasn't in the know up until a week ago when the board letter became public. And part of the reason for that is we were asked to maintain confidentiality of the board letter until it became public. So I apologize that this felt like it came quick, but I can guarantee you it didn't come much sooner for us to be able to even begin this, and then to know that because this was our last meeting before that 60-day timeline that the Board of Supervisors gave us to come back with results, we knew we had to write new rules and regulations in a very short period of time. So just to give you that perspective, what I have done, and the board has seen the proposed, it's on the website, everyone can take a look at the proposed changes to the rules and regulations. What I did is I went straight back to what the rules and regulations were before the markups that you all did back in February of 24 and started from scratch. Because there were so many different things that this board had approved then that were not going to pass based upon the letter that D4 Montgomery Step proposed. So these changes just reflect the jurisdiction that was proposed by Ms. Montgomery Step. And so what it does, and I want to talk briefly just about what it does and what it doesn't do. One is it gives us authority, according to the letter. Now, there's still negotiations to be had on this. We have to remember that this is just one part of the process. Once we submit our changes in rules and regulations, the county will draft an ordinance, and then it will be sent to the labor department to try to work out negotiations with, for example, the nurses union that works in the jail facilities. And so when we drafted this was drafted with every one of her independent changes that she requested in her letter. Specifically, it changes our jurisdiction from peace officers only. And I will clear something up because our rules and regulations also say custodial officers. We know that back in the day, there was a custodial officer in the detention facilities. It has since been dispensed with. That term now is just peace officer, but we didn't modify it because we didn't want to change what the board letter had already put in. And it gives us authority over employees, all employees, and contracted and medical providers, if they might be an employee of the county, under the direction of either the sheriff or the probation department. So that means in the juvenile detention facilities as well. Only in custody deaths. So that will not come into play for general medical issues that come up for somebody. Somebody cannot file a complaint that they didn't get the proper care. This is meant to really focus on what the major issue is, which is the in custody deaths. And that was a discussion amongst us early on when we started this process, that it really needed to focus on what was most important and take that first step. And so that is the crux of it. As you can tell, there are significant changes that we had to do just by changing the wording of our rules and regulations. Instead of it saying peace officers or subject officer, we had to change everything to subject of investigation. So you will note that throughout our rules and regulations, because now that term is really broad. And we defined that at the beginning. And you will also note at the very beginning of our rules and regs, there is a definition of what we constituted as a healthcare provider. Then that way we were very broad in that definition. It does not change any of the authorities we currently have. We still have subpoena power. And we fully expect that subpoena power to carry over to all these additional employees that we have jurisdiction over. The one issue that the board D4 supervisor really was focused on was us getting our investigations done in an early manner. They put in there that we should be doing it at a 1 year timeframe. We would love to be able to do our investigations in a 1 year timeframe, but there are many factors that come into play as to why we can't get to some of these cases in a 1 year timeframe, and that's the police officer bill of rights. So if there is, for example, criminal investigation that's involving one of the officers, or in this case, maybe there's a criminal investigation on one of the health staff, we have to work, and this is part of the negotiation phase, to see if those rights that are instilled under the police officer bill of rights of tolling the time that we have to do our investigation will also then apply to the medical staff that are included in that. We will be negotiating that because it will be very difficult for us to have one investigation against a peace officer and a different investigation and a different timeline medical staff in that same particular case. And so that'll be part of the process. I think that kind of hits on the big points. I know it's a lot. I expect there to be some questions. And just as a reminder to the board, this just starts the process. So your decision to move forward on this particular rules and regulations change starts the clock for the county council to prepare an ordinance that matches our rules and regulations. Once those two marry up together, then they're presented to the labor negotiation boards, and then they start the meet and confer. At some point in time, we're gonna come back, and I fully expect we may have to revise a couple of our rules and regulations depending upon what happens during meet and confer and that negotiation process with those individuals. So I think hopefully that's a thorough enough
Yeah,
explanation.
I'm gonna open it up for questions, but I just wanted to clarify to get to Mr. Wilson's point is that part of Supervisor Montgomery Stepp's proposal was to both the Sheriff's Department and to CLERB to work with the CAO to determine what additional resources we would need to do this new work well. And that is what Mr. Klein is going to be working with the CAO to determine how many investigators, what is that investigator like? Could it be a contract investigator? Because again, this is for on the medical piece, it's only for death cases. So we might not have the need for a full-time medical expert, but someone that we could call on when we do need them. With that, I will open it to questions, Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, so you're comfortable that supervisors realize that there's money's gonna be involved with this restructuring and expansion?
Yes, I sat through.
Mr. Clean is also.
He's made it very clear that there will be additional resources. The sheriff has also asked for additional resources because they will have to be providing us with additional information beyond what they provide to us now. And in fact, this was a conversation at the board presentation where a couple of the supervisors asked about what resources would be required, and they actually asked the supervisor to make it more clear in her proposal that we would need those answers before we could move forward with the actual ordinance. Ariana.
So my question is just to clarify that we are, like, CLERB is not part of meet and confer. We are not in those conversations where possible language could be changed.
Actually, I have been invited by the labor relations to sit at the table during these meet and confer sessions. I don't know what my role will be there yet, but I have been invited to participate in those sessions. I have heard everything from a couple months to 6 months to even longer sometimes to handle these negotiations. That doesn't mean that it's a never-ending process. At some point, the board has to make that decision, even if they haven't come to an agreement, that they're gonna move forward. But those should start within, I think it's 3 weeks following the county ordinance and our rules marrying up together.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Ware?
Are all, explain that, all staff currently in the jails, they come under, the sheriff department? Custodial staff,
So currently, CLERB does not have jurisdiction over anybody in the facilities other than peace officers. I believe this expands that. Because the term that's used there is employee. And D4 was very specific in adding that word to not limit it to just medical staff.
That is something, though, I do think we should clarify because not all of the staff in the detention facilities, I don't think, report to the sheriff. I think some of them report to general services. Yes, yeah, health and human services, that's correct. So, I think that will probably have to be clarified during negotiations of this ordinance.
Yes.
And we should seek those answers probably fairly soon.
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we will move to public comment on this item. Oh, so let me turn my microphone on so I can say that again. There are no other board member questions. We will move to public comment.
Now we have 5 requests to speak in person and 2 online and 1 comment to view as for the records.
Okay.
So I will start with the in person.
Okay.
First, we will call Denise Settle.
Hi, so I was called in, last Tuesday and was very supportive of this amendment to your oversight, and I'm really pleased that it's passed. I think that what the sheriff's office needs to know is that, you know, as members of the public, we want to have confidence in our public institutions. We want to. You know, right now, we've been burned. And our confidence is shaken. So, you know, any kind of oversight that can help us get to the point where we feel more, that there's more transparency and more oversight, and that things will change in a positive way, especially for the people, the 50% of the, you know, jail population that's mentally ill. I mean, it's crazy number of people. Crazy number of crazy people. How about that? So, you know, I'm really pleased that what I'm really worried about, is that, so often it seems that the sheriff's department or the sheriff's office is obstructionist. And even though recommendations have been made by this body and by other bodies, that have authority within the state of California, the sheriff's office has not taken them into consideration. They have not enacted them. And, you know, I just feel like it's a hamster wheel. We'll keep on, you know, continue to make recommendations. But if there's no teeth to this, that's very concerning. And I'm concerned about the lack of checks and balances with the sheriff's office and the lack of even real oversight from the Board of Supervisors, which is coming to light with this whole border issue that's in the press recently. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Sabrina Widow.
Well, good evening again. I'm happy to hear that CLERB may have some say when it comes to the medical staff. I mean, we've heard time and time, the medical staff come to these meetings and state how they don't want oversight. And I can only imagine as to why. I mean, we heard Melissa Burns, who was the head nurse in charge the day that Saxon died, July 20th, 2021, get on a CLERB meeting and state jail is the best place to receive treatment for an overdose, yet she allowed, I mean, she can bring my brother back to life when she gave him treatment. Or Claudette last week said at the Board of Supervisors meeting that she doesn't want to be, they don't want to be the scapegoat. So if they don't want to be the scapegoat, why not have oversight so that you're no longer fed to the wolves by the sheriffs? I mean, we saw in the Lisa Serna's case, they blamed the doctor and the nurse, but what about the deputies that did not transfer her? So hopefully that the recommendations that we'll be giving and be in this paperwork full of, I mean, when I see this paperwork, the deputies, it's just unfounded. I hope to see change, that you guys actually have oversight and that the recommendations continue to push forward. It's sad having to hear nurses such as Melissa Burns, Reggie Barreto, Carrie Cavello, Leanne Carnacia, Caitlin Hendricks, Marlena Banzik, Kelly Payne, Levy Santos, and Chantel Williams state that they don't want oversight, but you guys are here to protect and serve, to nurses are supposed to help save. I mean, if you wanted to not have oversight, go work in a regular hospital. I mean, you're working with inmates, with people that are mentally unstable, that are criminals. I mean, you're in a jail facility. There should be oversight of everybody that works in these facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Yusuf Miller.
Good evening, Yusuf Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition Saving Lives in Custody campaign in California. And I want to thank D4 and the CLERB for making this upward pressure to make sure we make changes and reforms in our county and in the jails. This type of reform, I think thankfully is narrow enough that we could probably get some buy-in on both sides. Like was said earlier, that we're talking about rogue nurses, rogue doctors, rogue deputies, not all the rest, so that they need oversight. If we were here to just make recommendations and policy recommendations over medical that we have no expertise in, that would be one thing. It's not what we're asking for. We're asking for the ones that neglected our family members and the ones that went rogue and off script to be held accountable. So I think this narrowing of the oversight was very clever and very specific. And that's what we've been asking for years. This request is not new to us. It's not new to many of you. The families have been asking for this type of oversight since 2020. And here we are, 2024, trying to go into 2025 on the right path. Please stay on that upward pressure because we need this pressure. Our labor unions, they're gonna try to do their best to help us out. We've talked to them and they are trying to come to a happy medium. I know you guys are trying to come to a happy medium. Keep us involved if you need our help and the family's help. They want to make a difference so that no one else is a Matthew Settles. So please don't keep us out of the any place that we can fit in that's appropriate to help make these changes. We need them, and without them, we suffer. So this is just one of many of those type of upward pressures we need. Let's get this one straight. It's one that's urgent, and it has to do with not only just medical personnel, but mental health personnel. If you're distinguishing between those two, we should know that sometimes they can be distinguished, but please upward pressure.
Thank you. I was going to do this actually during the last item, but I'm just going to read, for those of you who may not have seen the proposed rules and regulations changes, a healthcare provider is defined in the action that we're going to take today as a person, whether employed by the county or as a contractor that provides medical or mental health care or treatment under the direction of the sheriff's office or probation department. Healthcare provider includes but is not limited to doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, midwives, optometrists, radiologists, pharmacists, psychiatrists, therapists, dentists, dental hygiene practitioners, and other professionals that provide this type of service in county detention facilities. Go to the next.
Thank you. Next, we will call Paloma Serna.
I agree, what's been said here, tonight regarding, having you guys are overseeing the medical, but like Yusuf said, us also the deputies and stuff, I noticed that medical was dismissed, again, in these cases, especially the two that's being spoken or discussed tonight. Also too, it doesn't surprise me that some of the fault also lies, on both, it's just not medical. I know right now we're talking about medical, but it is the deputies too. They are as lazy, uncompassionate, and neglectful. It is sad to know that the statute of limitation is running out in a lot of these cases. This is the sheriff department's MO, and, they need to be held accountable. It's very, disheartening to know that, you are dismissing cases, despite you don't have things set up, and understand that will take time and stuff, but, cases will continue to be dismissed. Let's work on this right now, and then let's fight to get, try to get the qualified immunity, because I don't think that's right. If these deputies, and I am not anti-cop, I have friends and family that are California Highway Patrol, a detective from Riverside, and also a Metro Police in Las Vegas, Nevada. So I'm not anti, it's about the ones that are doing wrong. They should not fall under the statute of, they should not fall under the qualified immunity if they're killing people. And they're rightly killing people. We need the public, the Settle family, they need to see the videos. That is what brought to light in my daughter's case, is the videos. Here, the deputies are falsifying records, of just doing self checks. What else are they falsifying? And that's not right. That is not right for the family to go through that, because they want to cover up their stinking rear. So continue to fight for us and fight for the community in which you guys belong. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Elka.
Hi, Ilka Weston again. Thank you for letting me come up and speak. Again, I was very proud to speak on behalf last week, and I was very shocked, but not surprised that the sheriff is saying she's not going to follow the county's guidelines, or our wonderful clerk for that matter. And you guys are doing an amazing job. When we look at the history, there are growing pains. But let's look what county supervisors did do. Joel Anderson came forward and wanted $500 million given to the sheriff's department for a design of the building. Well, that seems like a waste of money to me. What about psych evaluations? What about better education for our deputies? What about having them after a year mandatory psych evaluations because they see things they can't unsee? Racist behavior is not okay. We need anger management. We need sensitivity training. Why was 500 million okay for a building design? Buildings don't kill people. The people inside being overworked or neglectful or learning that something's okay. Now that kills people. Putting people in general pop with a mental health illness, that can kill people. We are in the business of saving people. It is not a crime to be a human being. It is not a crime to be born. Challenges happen. And that's what I believe that the CLERB board is going to do. But we need to come down and control that 500 million and not give Kelly Martinez the right for that money. We need to find a way to interfere because she's not doing her job. She's refusing to listen to what we have put forward and what our county board of supervisors has voted in. That money needs to be used for our deputies for training, and for our deputies in our jails and institutions, for the people to be safe, because they're there to rehabilitate, not be killed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will start calling the online request to speak. First, we will call Leslie Crawford.
Yes, thank you for your time. This is not it's a question. I didn't hear anything about the criminal investigation review bulletin. Is there, I love the oversight you've been given, but is there any more oversight into their actual internal investigations that they endeavor to? You can't find anything out. I'll be dead before I know. I can't wait for a cold case file. I would like maybe in February more clarification. If you have any more oversight into their internal review investigations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Darwin Fishman.
Good evening. Thank you. Darwin, Racial Justice Coalition, San Diego, he, him, his. I wanted to jump in again and thank CLERB for doing this work. And I also hope that CLERB, that you are more public and open about what got you into this space. For starters, the district attorney, from the state audit report, it was clear that they criticized you guys, CLERB, for oversight for the in-custody deaths, state audit on in-custody deaths. It was not criticized the district attorney, but those are the two entities that are supposed to be responsible for oversight and accountability for what takes place in the jails. The district attorney has prosecuted for people for in-custody deaths. They're all medical professionals. There's doctors and nurses. They haven't prosecuted any of the sheriff deputies. That means by definition that if you're tasked with doing in-custody death, that you need to be able to have oversight of the medical professionals. Also, on another level, you should find a way to openly talk about how confusing it is if you're investigating and they're potentially blaming each other for it in terms of medical professionals and sheriff deputies. If they're saying that the wellness check wasn't done by the medical professional and the medical professional is saying they were denied access by the sheriff's department, then by definition, it's your responsibility to get to the bottom of it. And you can't obviously get to the bottom of it if you can only investigate half of that equation. So I think that's really important for people to understand, because otherwise you have what you have with the dynamics, which is rightfully so, where impacted families are coming and trying to get questions about how their loved ones died and also who's responsible and who's accountable. And you can't address it if you can only look at sheriff deputies and they're blocking you and or blaming another entity for being responsible for the death. So I hope that this is, again, front and center in your work as you go forward, and the community and impacted families will continue to support you as you do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, we have Shante Turner. Shante, can you hear us? Please, if you want to speak, unmute yourself.
Okay, let's move on. Was that the last speaker? The last person who requested to speak, Norris?
Correct. And we have one comment to be read for the.
Okay, go ahead.
So this comment was sent from Dale Diley. My fellow members of Showing Up for Racial Justice North County, San Diego, and I are excited to see focus and forceful attention on the topic of CLERB authority from the Board of Supervisors. We believe that CLERB and the Board of Supervisors need to go further. The CLERB need full authority to demand accountability and transparency from the sheriff. Although the new initiative by the Board of Supervisors giving the CLERB a wide oversight role is overdue and very welcome. It's only part of the solution. The Sheriff's Department is in general, and the Sheriff and Sheriff Martinez in particular, have frequently been non-responsive to CLERB requests for information on or action. I'm concerned that without additional authority, San Diego Sheriff's Office will work to run out the clock on CLERB investigation efforts. The Board of Supervisors has the authority to remedy this. The Sheriff's Department is under the control of the Board of Supervisors. Frustration on this is what drove Paul Parker to quit his job. Sheriff Martinez has also resisted calls from full screening of staff entering the jails. I strongly urge CLERB and the Board of Supervisors to be as assertive as possible in making policy changes to improve the responsiveness of the Sheriff's Department. And Sheriff Martinez to require that the sheriffs provide all data requested by the clerk in the timely manner, and that all staff entering the jail are screened at all times for illegal drugs. And that concludes our requests.
Thank you, Norris. With that, I think we're ready to have a vote on this item. Do I have a motion to approve, these changes to the rules and regulations? Mr. Wilson? Okay, and a second from Dr. Brown. Bonnie, can you call the roll?
Chair Miriam Pintor,
Yes.
Secretary Bonnie Pink, yes. Dr. Arlie Brown,
Yes.
Adele Fasano,
Yes.
Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Yes.
Andrew Hayes,
Yes.
Tim Ware,
Yes.
G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Let the record show that agenda item 8 passed with 8 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. Congratulations, everyone. This is a big step forward, given our action in February. Thank you. We will move to item number 9, unfinished business. This is a discussion of policy recommendations that CLERB has made to the sheriff's office, and their response to us. Mr. Klein, you want to introduce us to the first one?
This goes back, this is, the audit recommendations. And so again, I just wanted to alert the community that those are up on our website. And we would ask you to take the time to review them because we know there was quite a few of them. And then we will bring this back as an agenda item in February when we, everyone gets a chance to review it.
I remember item number 9. Policy recommendations.
And that will go for those same policy recommendations. I don't think we have, any opportunity at this point in time to have those as agenda item.
I'm sorry, I thought that this item number 9, was the sheriff's responses to our policy recommendations attached to I, J, and K. I have them here if you don't.
Yep.
Okay.
And the one thing I do want to mention is that there is one set of recommendations. It appears that we had the wrong case number. That was the 531 that the sheriff responded to, and that was there was 5 recommendations that were made over a year ago regarding the CIRB process and how there was 5 recommendations. Their response only addresses 3, 4, and 5, and I've been told by the sheriff's liaison that they will be responding to 1 and 2 in short order as well.
So we made 5 recommendations regarding to the posting and delivery of the CLERB reports, the CIRB reports. They responded to 3 of those recommendations. They did not adopt our changes. I have questions about the response that they gave us, Mr. Klein. I don't believe there's anyone here to answer those questions tonight, so I think the best way is for me to send an email to Lieutenant Perkins and get some clarification on why they cannot post them within 10 days. That's the question that I have. Because their response to us is that it takes a lot of time to put these reports together, and I think that what is unclear to me is that my recollection is that we asked that the CLERB reports be posted on the website within 10 days of the review being completed. And he's suggesting that they can't do that, which I don't understand. So
yeah,
I will send an email so we can get clarification when he has a CLERB expert available to answer them.
Yeah, and I think that's the recommendations I would suggest to the rest of the board. If you have any questions on the recommendations, that we put those recommendations to the liaison so that they have the ability to go back to their SMEs and figure out what that response might look like, and we give them an opportunity to do that instead of putting a liaison up here who may not know the answer to those questions.
Okay, thank you. The other policy recommendation related to updating the Detention Services Bureau policies and procedures regarding sanitation and hygiene inspection to retain hard copies of those weekly inspections for a period of 2 years as required by the County of San Diego retention policy schedule. We asked that those records be maintained for 2 years, the way the rest of the county is required to maintain those records for 2 years. And the sheriff's office responded, and they are going to adopt our recommendation. So that's the recommendation that we made, that they have agreed with and they have adopted. The third one is regarding video camera placement in a particular cell that we asked it to be adjusted based on our investigation, that we could not see into a cell to get the information that we needed. And their response was that it was not possible, given their, the camera angle was not possible to move it to where we requested, because it would eliminate their view to other parts of the cell. So does anyone have any questions about these responses? Mr. Wilson?
Do we have to change the lens to a panoramic or fisheye lens?
That is not what we said. We specifically, our recommendation had to do with the angle of the camera facing that cell.
Can we go back and ask them to do that then, since I'm not willing to move it?
We can, I think,
Change lens.
I think that's a good idea, but I think the best way to handle it tonight is for, if you have a specific suggestion, maybe send it to Brett or, yeah. Thank you. Any other board questions regarding those? Then we will move to item number 10, board comment. Any specific comments or from the board tonight? I've made mine already during the chair's report. Anything? Don't have any board members over here. Okay, thank you. Query for the sheriff and probation liaisons. I don't see them.
They are
they
here,
in the
they're
hall?
just outside.
Okay. Start with Lieutenant Perkins. Are you here?
They're coming right now.
Okay.
Hi, Ron Slewin with the probation department.
Mr. Lewin. I don't recall if you have a particular report for us tonight, if you're coming back to us with anything that we asked for last month.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I just wanna
Well, why don't you
note,
start with what you have for us? Thank
yeah, I
you.
just wanted to note that we, notified clerk staff, last month that we adopted, policy recommendations related to the following cases: 23062, 23087, 23088. And letters were sent related to all those previously, that the recommendations were working through our policy and legislation unit and being vetted for adoption. That has since been done, and those changes as described in those letters were adopted.
I'm sorry, Mr. Klein, do we have letters from the probation department that the board has not seen yet? I don't see them in the packet that.
I don't see them in the packet either.
Okay.
So those will have to be added to our February. That'll be added to the February doc.
Okay. Thank you. We haven't seen them, so I don't know what they are yet, but we will bring them up again at our February meeting. Thank you for letting me know.
My pleasure.
Any questions for our probation liaison tonight from the board? Mr. Wilson?
Solitary confinement. As I understand, probation department, juveniles, okay, solitary confinement is not used. Is that correct?
Correct. Each young person, I can't say youth per se, because we have some chronological adults in our facility. Each young person is in a single room. There's no double rooms anymore, or triple. There hasn't been for a long time. So No, that's not a thing. They're all in their own rooms. SB 1143 requires their own rooms all the time. There is some provisions for a short period of room confinement, depending on certain factors. But no, there's no solitary confinement per se.
Nothing that's the equivalent of administrative separation then in the probation facilities.
There is a administrative separation, which is a protocol for certain situations, but the young person is everybody's still going to be in their own rooms. Anybody's on administrative separation is more of a protocol for when they're out. And then they have to be with 2 officers at all times, and there's some restraint gear that's used. There's some different protocols that it will govern how they go to school, how they get their programming, but it's not a solitary confinement. They're still back in their room with everybody else. No restraint gear, they're in their room when it's time to go in their room for bedtime or, another time where the group has to go up for whatever reason, emergency or something like that.
Did I answer your question, Mr. Wilson? And then, anyone else have a question? Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to report that to the board members and the community, you might see some different the ways that we document juvenile probation cases. You will see a reflection of a J Doe along with the case number moving forward. And that's at the request of the probation department for us to make these changes to make it as best possible to maintain the confidentiality of the young adults, young individuals.
So this for anyone, even if they're over 18?
As long as they're under juvenile probation and the juvenile court still has jurisdiction over that individual, then yes, we will do our best to comply and at the request of probation department.
Okay, I also just wanted to say we look very much forward to having Chief Nelson here in February. And if there's a particular topic that she intends to address to us, that would be good to know. And also encourage that, and I will ask her when she arrives, that we have a sit down with probation leadership like we've been able to do with the sheriff's leadership. I think we'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Perkins.
Good evening, everyone. So correct me if I'm wrong, CEO Kalina, but I believe the 2 questions that were asked, the first one had to do with our detention facilities. We have cameras located entryways, doors, exits, etc. So I talked to pretty much all the captains at our detention facility, and also talked to our head of sheriff's facilities. As you can imagine, collectively in the system, there's hundreds and hundreds of cameras. But I was assured that, yeah, all the main entrances and exits have, a lot of cameras coverage. There could be some, minor, emergency exits or something that might not necessarily have a camera assigned to it, but there's so many cameras in the system that are overlapping that essentially it wouldn't be possible to not be caught on camera at some point when you're coming or going from the facility. So I can attest to that just from working facilities. A lot of cameras. The good news is some of our facilities that have older cameras, we've had this upgrade project going on for several years where we're cycling out the old infrastructure for new cameras, which are, hold much more data, which is great for everybody, as well as much better resolution. So it's moving along, and most of the facilities now have some of these new cameras, and hopefully in the next couple of years they'll all be completely updated.
And that was a question that board member Wilson had last meeting, so I just wanted to make sure that answers your question.
I was concerned about the number of entry control points in a building. And if they were covered, and has there ever been an effort to control the number of entry control points or exit control points? Because when you have multiple points that individual personnel can come back and forth to a building, you increase the number of chances of things getting in the building that should get there or get out.
Correct.
So,
I can just tell you, based on my experience, we have a very extensive, I guess what we call box guard system, which I'm sure you're aware with the sensors. Our IDs double as our prox guard. It records when we come in and out. Pretty much all our facilities, the exterior doors coming in and out of the facility are managed by a prox guard reader. Some of the interior doors you might experience, you can use a key like in the facilities, but most of the major ones where we're keeping track of people coming and going are managed by prox guard sensor. Now, obviously, there's some other exceptions, and I'd have to look into as far as fire safety and stuff, where you can't prevent someone from exiting certain areas, if there's an emergency or a fire. But yes, we have an extensive prox guard and surveillance system that pretty much captures folks.
Any other questions or comments for Lieutenant Perkins from the board? Mr. Wilson?
The manning level, the sheriff's department, are you still short deputies?
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers. I know the sheriff spoke to that, when she was here not too long ago. Yeah, there's always a recruitment effort, and there's always turnover that we're trying to keep ahead of. But I can tell you, we try to fill most of our academies, our law enforcement, as well as our detention services academies. I can also tell you, we're very fortunate that a lot of people want to work in San Diego, want to work for the sheriff's department, so we do get quite a bit of applicants. I know other jurisdictions around the country sometimes have harder problem finding folks, but we're pretty lucky in the opportunities that we have for this agency. We get quite a few people that apply here, not just new, but also experienced officers, what we call laterals from other agencies in the county and out of the county, come here. And we actually develop a lot of incentives as well to bring people here, because it's a very competitive market for experienced peace officers. So we've added quite a few incentives over the years to help bring people here.
I have a follow-up question to that.
Yes, Dr. Brown, and can I remind board members to please use their microphones when they're asking, so people online can hear you?
Sorry, thank you. And thank you. Staffing, I mean, how short-staffed are you in terms of how many positions you have and how many of those positions are going unfilled? Without people, how many, we constantly hear about law enforcement not being fully staffed or the short officers. Madam Chair, I'm trying to find a way to ask a question about how do we take a look at that and what you're doing to keep the like your people processes and see if we can all look at a way of making sure that you get the officers that you need. Because I constantly hear, at least I have where I said I'm constantly hearing about being short-staffed. So what can we do to remedy that?
So I'd be more than happy to get the figures from personnel division. I don't have those off the top of my head.
Okay.
Like I said, we have to do quite a bit in the recruiting department to retain and attract people. I would say you hear that term a lot. Law enforcement is short staffed, but I say that can vary even greatly in the region. Like San Diego PD staffing is different than ours, is different than a small police department. So our staffing, I think, has always been pretty good for the area, but I can definitely give you, some numbers.
You don't have a problem recruiting female officers and with detention and what have you, right?
I don't believe so. We have quite a few, and maybe we hired quite a few folks.
All right, thank you.
If you want to present something to us at the February board meeting, Lieutenant Perkins, also just remind for board members that we do have some mandatory trainings coming, and maybe some of these questions could be answered there as well.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to work with EO Klein and they're on that now.
There was one more question that was asked at a prior event that he was gonna address today as well.
Please, sorry, I didn't need to cut him off.
Oh, no problem. I believe the other question was, how many of our, random employee slash, not just employees, but everyone coming in and out of jails, screenings that we've done since we implemented our new program. Well, so far, we've done, 6 separate, of the screenings. We have more to come, but, so 6 so far.
So those are people that you moved to a full body scan screening? Or are you saying that you've only done 6 random screenings at detention facilities since you started the program?
6 of the full screenings of everyone coming in and out, employees, contractors, that the presentation that Assistant Sheriff Lopez gave, that program, we've done 6 of those inspections that are comprehensive, all the folks coming into work. And like I said, all the visitors, I'm sorry, the contractors, anyone coming inside the walls of the jail. We've done 6 of those.
I can guess the next question that's gonna come to you, so maybe we can address it next time, is during those 6 random screenings, what was found?
I can find out, if there's anything, I know there was no, to my knowledge, no contraband or legal substances found. You can see if there was something maybe, something against policy, but wouldn't be a law violation.
That, if that answers that, that's almost.
It answers that, but that seems like a low number to me. 6 actual screening events since the policy was announced.
I can certainly talk about it further, but like Assistant Sheriff Lopez kind of spelled out in the presentation, it's the fact that we're even doing is it's a lot of resources, a lot of extra staffing to get this done. And I know, the sheriff and all our commanders and stuff really work hard to make this happen, because it does take quite a bit of, like I said, extra staffing when you're talking about the overlap and people coming and people going for to make sure everybody's where they need to be. The turnover of staff, so it's in the canines, and it's a lot of work. But I know like I said, we're constantly learning, we're constantly improving, and I'm sure we'll probably start perfecting it. I'm sure you'll probably see that number go up. I wouldn't doubt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Happy holidays.
And to you. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Do they have public comment?
You can make a comment to the board, yes.
Okay. Are they not going to hear my public comment? Because it has to do with what's stated. Does my voice even matter to them?
You want to go ahead and make your comment?
Yes.
Okay.
So the thing is, I think it's a lot of excuses of why they have not done, a lot more random scanning of their employees. And also too, he talked about, the cameras, there's so many. Every Friday, we've actually talked, I don't know his position. It's, Dustin Lopez and also, Mike Ram. Me, Yusuf Miller, and Cheryl Canson, and my daughter Deanna, we attended a meeting with him. And we had mentioned to him that at the Central Jail, because every Friday we go there, we do agree to meet with individuals being released from custody. And so we provide them, warm food, clothing, stuff like that. But we sit there in front of the doors, the 2 doors where people are being released and employees are walking in. There's only 1 camera there, and no one is supervising that door. I have a lot of video footage of that, and he talks about the key. They just go and swipe, not swipe, they just tap it, and the door open and they go in. But they have a sign there saying that they will be looking at their ID, identification, stuff like that. There's no one there. We're there from 8 o'clock till midnight. And there's Grubhub, DoorDash going in and out of that door to deputies. And who's supervising that to what's being taken into the jails? And this is right off of, a main street. And so one day we had mentioned this to Dustin Lopez and to Mike Graham we were sitting there, they released 2 individuals, and they kind of hung out right there because they were eating the food and whatever. But they went and pooed on that door where the employees were going in. They were able to open it and go right in. So that door, I mean, it needs to, I mean, it really needs to be looked at, you know, and there's only one camera facing two doors. And there's food in and out, you know, backpacks in and out. No one's is even monitoring what's going in. You know, and so if you could come up with a question to ask them, maybe they could come back with that, because I have proof we're there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. And that concludes our meeting. Actually, Ellen, if you could please call us into closed session.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Tonight's closed session, item 12, verse 12A is a conference with legal counsel, and that is pursuant to Government Code Section 54969. I apologize for inadvertently putting the authority there, but that is legal counsel on a current civil service appeal. And then 12B are all 18 summary hearing cases pursuant to public employee discipline, dismissal, and release under Government Code Section 5497 as listed in the agenda, and that concludes my read-in.
Thank you.
There was a communication error. This woman died 32